podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Did you have a nice birthday, Christmas and New Year's?
Very good, thank you. Yes, I enjoyed all three, well-ish. I spent my birthday on a plane, or in fact 2 planes, many delays, so, it wasn't all that fun, but I had a birthday drink in San Francisco airport.
Nice, and what age did that birthday make you again?
21.
Okay, happy 21st. And Christmas in America, what do they do differently there? Do they have the turkey upside down? Do they... They don't know what Christmas pudding is, presumably.
Actually, it's pretty low-key because the big celebration is Thanksgiving.
Right.
So, it was fairly low-key, but I enjoyed frequenting very many bars. So I was in Seattle for Christmas and Portland for a couple of days between Christmas and New Year, and then Seattle for New Year, and came home on the 1st of Jan.
Nice, very nice. Any wild parties on New Year's Eve for you?
No, quite quiet, in fact. Yeah, just a Mexican New Year's-ish, sort of.
Well, how does that work?
Well, Mexican restaurant.
You could have just done that here. I guess they're probably better in California, though, right? No, you weren't in California. You were in Washington.
No, Seattle's further north. Yeah. So what about you?
Yeah, it was lovely, thank you. Family and friends and delight. And Manchester United. I didn't go to Stoke on Boxing Day, which I was quite pleased about.
We've worked out that you are the problem.
No, it's not true.
So everyone was wondering why United associate, but it's you going to the games. As soon as you didn't go to a game, much improved performance. And talking of good New Year's, a good New Year for Louis van Gaal. He has a job, which is a surprise to many. Maybe not Ed Woodward. And United won the first game of 2016.
Yeah, the idea that I'm a jinx is nonsense. I did not go to the Stoke game and we lost that. And then I went to the Chelsea game and we didn't lose that, did we? And I may not have been to the Swansea game, but that's a small, irrelevant point.
You're only as jinxy as your last game, that's what I say.
So, when we left you, listeners, we said we'd be back this week unless Louis van Gaal got sacked in the meantime. That wasn't any sort of hyperbole or joke. It looked pretty likely, and indeed, after the defeat to Norwich, that was when everything was at its peak in terms of rumours. And I have to say, at this point, after that Stoke game, I'm quite surprised he's still the manager. And the story at one point was that he was also quite surprised he was still the manager.
Yeah, although the briefing in the background has been that Van Gaal's job is safe, was always safe, and there's no chance of him getting sacked. And in fact, that perhaps Ed Woodward, fearing the consequences for his own career of another failure, is fully behind Louis van Gaal. Andy Mitten says that United want the longevity, which is interesting given that he's only ever going to be in place for another 18 months. We'll see. He's still in a job, which after the performance against Stoke is maybe surprising, because United were truly awful. Or another way of putting it, Stoke were much better. Outplayed at Stoke. The tiki-taka of Stoke's little front three.
Arnautovic not so little, of course. But the whole thing around Van Gaal, that was the first time I'd written anything. I wrote a thing on Bleacher Report about how this is sort of like, regretfully, this has got to be the time when you say goodbye to Van Gaal because it really doesn't look as if the players are with him. The performance at Stoke I thought was worse than the game against Norwich. Obviously, on paper, losing at home to Norwich is much worse than losing away to Stoke, which is ultimately not, taken in isolation, is not a terrible result. But it was the fact that I think there'd been a week before the Norwich game from the Bournemouth game in which to get a response, and there was obviously no response. Then came Stoke and there was less than no response. It was probably the worst of all the performances this season. It was totally lacking in a bunch of technical stuff, they just looked bad, but all the cliches that you could throw at them as well, the whatever. Some people are very scathing about notions like commitment and heart and all these kind of things, but actually they're vital in professional sport. And United just didn't look like they had any of that, which I thought was quite damning about how the players saw Van Gaal. But they've really turned it around since then.
apart from the individual errors and very poor performances, front four were terrible, back four not much better than that, middle two not much better than that. Apart from those individual performances and individual errors in the case of Memphis Depay, also, a lack of commitment was showing, and it did feel like they'd given up on their manager. But totally different against Chelsea. Not a great performance, but a spirited one. United actually attacked. Chelsea were there for the taking, of course, not particularly poor, worse than United this season, of course. And in a sense, the game finished on a bit of a flat note, really, because the feeling was that, perhaps United could have beaten Chelsea, given this team's been in such poor performance, put in such poor performances this season. But still, more spirited from United. Definitely a pretty good first half. The dominant team create some chances.
Of course, let some chances slip too. De Gea had to be at his best to keep that one at 0-0. A fantastic double save, I think, in the second half. Might have been the end of the first half. And a couple of really good saves in isolation as well. So after that game, Van Gaal said United were unlucky, which is something he said a lot this season. And most of the time when he said it, I've kind of been sat there cringing, thinking, what are you doing? Why are you saying this? That's kind of not a very good look. And also sometimes didn't really ring particularly true, felt a bit disingenuous. But actually, he mentioned that again in this game. And for once, I think he was probably right to sort of bemoan United's slight lack of fortune. Hit the bar, hit the post. Definitely should have had 2 penalties.
Yeah, definitely unlucky on the penalty shouts. I'm not sure whether hitting the bar on the post is bad luck. I mean, it's not accurate, is it? But, maybe that's just being a little bit pedantic. So, for the most part, United have not been unlucky this season. Some ill luck in the Chelsea game, probably should have had 2 penalties. Of course, we didn't talk about the big talking point about Stoke, apart from United's dreadful performance, the first time that Wayne Rooney had been properly, officially dropped from the team. And Van Gaal explained it afterwards and said that, they talked about the strategy and the best strategy was leaving Rooney out.
Yeah, 45 minutes that lasted in a period where United were playing 2 games in 3 days, so probably shouldn't read all that much into it, should we? He's been back and banging them in ever since. Banging one in, yeah. And he was okay in the second half against Stoke. No better than that. Okay against Chelsea and a little bit better. He got a man of the match award against Chelsea, which was kind of ridiculous. And then all right against Swansea City. Scored all right and no more than that. He scored a very fine goal, of course. What a goal.
Yeah, a great flick and just instinctive. I wasn't sure that Rooney had that kind of thing left in him.
It was beautiful to see. It was a really fine goal. And actually, I thought he was better than all right in that game because that goal was the icing on the cake of a kind of decent to good performance. So he definitely gets a good overall for that. Didn't do too much wrong that I can remember off the top of my head.
The thing about the Chelsea game was the kind of extra energy United seemed to have. Martial, all right down the left, Young bombing down the right, as he has done the last few games, and Schneiderlin, probably the most important player to come back into the team, giving United a lot of energy in midfield, I thought. I mean, he's definitely been missed, his sort of aggression, and, I'm not sure he's the world's best defensive midfielder. Certainly in terms of, covering space. He's pretty poor at times, but his energy is really important, and Herrera back into the side as well, and it felt like it gave United a bit more of a dynamic feel to the central midfield.
Yeah, I mean, Schweinsteiger back as well, and it just looked much more like a proper team, because he restored the partnership of Blint and Smalling at the back, which he then dismantled again, and we come on to the Swansea game and the strange defensive choices he made. But the whole unit looked pretty functional, but the attack was buzzy and full of energy and exciting, and Juan Mata looked better than he has done against Chelsea. So maybe a bit of a point to prove, maybe something to do with the looming threat of Mourinho. And of course, off the pitch stuff has been a big talking point too. There was the press conference before the Stoke game, where just before Christmas, where Van Gaal announced at the end of it, "Enjoy your mince pies and wine, thank you," and walked out. I was there expressly because the Premier League rules meant he had to go. Asked the press if they felt they should apologise to him, and then the Sun had a horrifically snippy back page out after that. Then in his post-match press conference after Chelsea, he said, "You have written that I have a stormy head, but I left with a quiet head." He's fed up with the actually disingenuous press reporting, and he was right. He didn't storm out of that press conference. He sort of basically read a prepared statement and left.
Yes, he talked about media lies, and or has done in the past. Are you one of these media that lies all the time, Paul?
No, as I've been at pains to state, I'm certainly not a journalist. He was talking about the reporting that he had been or was on the verge of being sacked, which was not actually the case.
No, as we've heard, repeatedly, or as has been briefed repeatedly since. So he was not on the verge of being sacked, and he didn't storm out of that press conference. It was quite odd and, bordering on Rafa Benitez-esque. Not exactly a user all idiots from Fergie, was it? But kind of Van Gaal making a statement there, and fair enough. Can't do that every week, but as a point, that'll do. And that you mentioned the Sun back page, terrible back page. I mean, just pathetically childish. I'm not sure what exactly they want to achieve with that other than being pathetically childish.
Yeah, it was really like a very pathetic response to being criticised, basically, and not entirely surprising, given the people responsible for football coverage at the Sun. A very unpleasant rag.
Absolutely, totally agree. Now, on something much more pleasant. Swansea game, and a victory for United. First time United have won since November. First time United have scored twice since early November. A miracle of miracles. And United actually just about deserved the win too.
Yeah, he didn't get to set another record because I think it was 7 games was a record, but then it would have had to get to more than 10 to set the next record. The 4 losses on a bounce was pretty intense, but he smashed that record too, and we're back to winning ways now. We've beaten the team 2 points to get above the relegation zone or whatever it is. It was a good performance, I thought, by United. The first half was depressing, though.
First half was everything we've come to expect from United this season.
Yeah.
First half was terrible, slow, really, really slow. There were groans at times from the crowd, although, of course, they were pretty supportive generally. Yeah, I thought United just weren't moving the ball quick enough, couldn't get it into Martial, couldn't get it into Rooney, and just a very typical United performance, although Young bombing down the right wing was probably the kind of highlight, and every time Martial got the ball, he gave Rangel a real torrid time, as he does with anyone he faces, of course. Second half, much, much better performance. I mean, probably one of the best halves of football from United this season. That's relative, of course. I'm not saying United were great, but much better as an attacking force. Massa in the game, Martial great, Rooney scored fine goal, Schneiderlin, Schweinsteiger kind of running things from midfield, Young bombing on, nominally at full-back or wing-back, but basically playing as an extra winger, and, it worked. Van Gaal called it high risk, and I suppose it was high risk. So the highest risk thing was the fact that he changed the shape of his back 3 or back 4 or back 5 3 or 4 times in the game.
Of course, the second half was better because we score the goals, and you win only when you score the goals. But as a team, our first half performance was better. We don't give any chance away in the first half, and we play with 3 defenders, a risky shape, a risky system. But we want to give pressure from the first minute, and we have done that. And we have created chances, but we don't score. But you have to score out of the chances. But in the second half, we created less chances, but we scored. And then you say, yeah, the second half is better. Van Gaal totally wrong with his numbers, by the way. More created, 9 chances created in the second half to 4 in the first, and Swansea created 2 chances in the first half when he said they created none. So just wrong, as well as bafflingly bizarre as an analysis of the relative merits of the 2 halves of football.
Yeah, he's probably just disappointed that United only had 53% of the possession. 70% is clearly the target mark, because United have been on or around that almost all season. And there you go. Not dominating.
It's such garbage. It's such garbage, because United, apart from the first 10 minutes, where we always look good in the first 10 minutes, right? This has been the pattern all season long. 10 good minutes and then it all goes horribly flat. The first half was just a joke. At half-time in that game, it was like, okay, we're back to Van Gaal out then, But then they really turned it around, and he did change the system, and Ashley Young had an absolutely inspired 20 minutes after the stroke of half-time. He was just on fire playing whatever position it was. At one point, I think Anthony Martial was playing hybrid left wing back centre forward.
Yeah, it was really odd. And I have to say, some of the changes, unlucky with Phil Jones, of course, got injured.
that ain't bad luck.
No, that's true. There's a pattern there. Yeah, if he was a horse, you'd shoot him, of course. But some of the other changes, swapping Blint and Darmian twice. in terms of their position just made no sense whatsoever. None. Can't work that one out. Maybe that's the riskiest thing in the game.
Yeah, and it also directly led to the goal, didn't it? To Swansea's goal, because Damian was just caught all at sea, and you can't really blame the lad, to be honest, because he changed positions 3 times in the course of the same game.
Right, yeah, and the other piece of ill luck, and Alan Curtis talked about it after the game, was with Swansea. Actually, I mean, they didn't create a lot, but hit the post bar, I'm trying to remember, one of the two, and had a couple of other close chances as well. So United could have let that one slip too. Didn't in the end, and I guess after the second goal was scored, it was pretty controlled from United, except for, and this would have sent the Old Trafford crowd mental, the goalkeeper heading one about 3 inches wide, deep into injury time. Brutal,
absolutely brutal. Darren Richmond tweeting that Van Gaal would just have been sacked on the spot if the opposition goalkeeper had scored.
Oh, I'm too right. I'd have sacked him on the spot if I was chairman. I'd have run down from my posh seats and just fired him, brought out a red card and just showed him one there and then. Now, that would be a firing, wouldn't it?
It really would. United were exciting to watch from the beginning of the second half to the point at which they scored, and then again after Swansea had scored. And that there was a huge number of positives in that, but it's a bit worrying how much they seemed to panic when they took the lead.
They did, yeah, and that's a sign of a large lack of confidence, isn't it? Yeah, they really retrenched for a while. But some of the attacking play, as you say, was really good. I thought, particularly Martial, so direct. Herrera, while he was on the pitch, just moves the ball so much quicker, and it really helps United. And Mata, I thought he linked up with Martial and Rooney very, very well. And he found lots of space, and that's because he didn't have to worry about the right side of attack at all. He didn't really bother about the right side of defence either. But then again, I wouldn't say that sort of Sun Young down that side was really penetrating much. But I thought he was very nice coming inside and creating a few chances.
Yeah, absolutely. And Martial, it just looks more and more special every game. Of course, he scored a goal and provided an assist. You could say that the assist was not the best, actually, and that's why Rooney had to pull off that total worldie of a finish. But he just looks... I don't know, he just looks electric, man, every time he gets the ball and runs with it. And actually, I think playing him off the left in a 4-3-3 is a wonderful use of his talents. I don't have any problem at all with using him as a kind of wide inside forward, because he just terrorises defenders from that position.
He does, yeah. Would you call that a 4-3-3 from United?
Absolutely not. I just mean, in theory, if you kind of... I don't think it's bad to play Martial out wide, basically, is what I'm saying, so long as he has a very defined attacking role.
Yeah. So right now, the trade-off is Memphis or Rooney, I guess. I mean, and Rooney has his special privileges, aside from 45 minutes against Stoke. So, Martial is United's best number 9 and at the moment best number 11 as well.
Probably be their best number sort of 6 through 11, really, wouldn't it?
Right, yeah. I mean, he's just got the talent. So if Memphis was in better form, then it would... make much less sense to deploy Martial from the left. As it is, unless he gets the ball lots, then United are throwing away their most penetrative and most dangerous player. And, he doesn't always get the ball lots in a very attacking area, but he did against Swansea, and that, helped a lot, because, he's just has the ability and the pace to cause so much damage there and can cut inside, and it's just a huge threat when he does.
Yeah, absolutely. So the ship for now appears to be a little bit more steady, and I guess what I've been wondering over the Christmas period while you've been far away on the other side of the world, Ed, is what have you made of it all? Would you have sacked Van Gaal over Christmas? Do you think it's kind of a good thing that United are sticking with him in spite of the troubles, or is it that actually they're making something of a rod for their own back because the best it's going to get is not particularly exciting or good under Van Gaal?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? I mean, at the moment, there's no evidence whatsoever that United are going to build or Van Gaal is going to build a great side out of this. Just none at all. And, maybe he will, but this team is not going to win the Premier League this season, don't score enough goals, don't take enough risks to do it, and it doesn't feel like there's a lot of progress. So, I've said on the pod before, I didn't really see the benefit of sacking him mid-season. I'm not sure United would have got a great bump. That changed, of course, when Mourinho was available. Not that I really want him anywhere near Old Trafford, but when you get a world-class coach like that and he's available and United are just atrocious and losing 4 on the trot and not winning for 8 matches, then that was a real big decision from United. And basically they've said that they're not going to employ him, that they're sticking with Van Gaal, and Van Gaal's going to see his contract out, which will be very interesting. So, I'm not sure I would have fired him, only because I wasn't sure what the benefits were of that. If a great manager became available in the summer, and there are a few, I would move heaven and earth to get them, because it doesn't feel like Van Gaal is going to create anything that's very good at United at all.
I kind of feel like that's basically where I stand. I've moved from being pretty much certain that we should give Van Gaal 18 months more, whatever happens, to being a bit less certain of that because of just how dreadful it's got. Because of how the peak is so low now, like the best it ever gets is good, not like amazing. And that's so rare, and the troughs are so deep. And because mostly it just looked like the players weren't with him, and I think my opinion sort of swings again if they are, but the sense that we're kind of going from game to game now. So like that Swansea result was good, and the Chelsea performance was a lot better, but Chelsea and Swansea are both bad teams, although Chelsea played well today. But Swansea have had an absolutely torrid season, so they're not much of a scalp, It's all relative, isn't it? It's because we lost to Norwich and Bournemouth that it seems good that we beat Swansea, instead of totally normal that we beat Swansea.
Yeah, and some game. Well, Sheffield United in the FA Cup coming up, really ought to win that one. But away at Newcastle and home
then
to
Anfield.
Away at Liverpool. Yeah, and that's going to be Newcastle pretty rubbish generally this season, aside from the occasional game, but away at Anfield. I know Liverpool lost at West Ham the other day. They're a work in progress, but that's going to be a super, super tough game for United.
It really is, because this is a game where both teams have really only got the big games to salvage their season, right? That's the only thing that's really going for them. Newcastle have been pretty dreadful, and we'll come on to a fuller preview of that shortly, I guess. But you can imagine them getting up for it and getting a result, because they have done that this season in some big games, and this will obviously be one.
Yeah.
So it's not a formality.
I think the next 6 weeks or so are going to be pretty testing for United. Away at Newcastle, away at Liverpool, home Southampton, they blow hot and cold, of course. The home game with Stoke, just played them. Away at Chelsea, who seem to be picking up some momentum. Then the double-header with Midtjylland in the Europa League, and then it's Arsenal. So, not all of those games are easy, are they?
No.
And it's certainly going to test, and United hasn't done that well in all of the big games this season. So we'll see. We'll see whether there's any real momentum coming out of the draw with Chelsea and the win over Swansea. It's hard to say that there is just yet.
Absolutely, and you have to say that the credit that Van Gaal has got, well, Van Gaal just doesn't have any credit left with supporters at all. The only supporters that are still with Van Gaal are people who believe in kind of solidity and giving the manager a chance to the nth degree, really. It's not a social media thing that people don't want Van Gaal at the club. It's widespread at Old Trafford too. I think I estimated somewhere like 60% or a little while ago, but I'm sure that 80% of that Old Trafford crowd would be glad if Van Gaal was replaced with someone. I think it might be a bit of a careful what you wish for situation, because we're just not sure who to get in. Now, we haven't even mentioned this, but someone who Paul Scholes described as a clown selling Jose Mourinho scarves outside Old Trafford.
Yes. Well, clearly this guy is a clown, because he didn't realise that United is spelt with an I in it.
But the bigger clowns were the people that bought them. And there was one guy, I don't know if he knows this or not, but who's standing right in front of the press box with a Mourinho scarf on. So his picture was widely distributed around the internet. And then Chelsea fans started singing Jose Mourinho, as you would expect them to. And he held up the United scarf with Mourinho's face on it aloft towards them. And I just couldn't work out what was going through his head when he was doing that. It was like, yeah, I agree with you, Jose Mourinho, or he's ours now, look, he's on this scarf. Either way, it was weird.
Embarrassing, yeah. No, I don't like that kind of thing. That feels the kind of thing that Chelsea fans would do, to be honest. So I think we don't need any of that. And Andy Mitten wrote a piece in one of his columns a couple of weeks ago where he talked about the difference in different types of fans. And I have to say I didn't agree with all of what he wrote. So he's basically said that the club are backing Van Gaal, they're going to back him whatever. They want the longevity that comes with backing a manager, point to the success of Busby and Ferguson, and that Van Gaal does have support in the ground, and match-going fans are generally more supportive than other fans. And I think that distinction is a little crude, but it's something I've noticed from 30-odd years back, and people who are older than me would say the same thing, I guess, that Old Trafford's fans do not like getting on the back of the team or the manager. It's famously, when a team scores against United, the Stretford end would get up and start chanting United. This is a culture that is long ingrained, I think. So support in the stands and support for Van Gaal in Old Trafford is stronger than in social media and wider. But go down the pub, talk to some United fans, and people are not happy.
Yeah, it's the difference between vocal support at the ground. Like, there's plenty of people who would paradoxically both sing Louis van Gaal's Red and White Army and be delighted if he was sacked the next day. You can do both things, right? It's the difference between being like in the ground and supporting the team in a kind of active, conscious way versus the kind of slightly more dispassionate analysis that comes when you walk away from that. Because his name was sung against Chelsea. I didn't go to Swansea, so I don't know. But his name, it got a couple of fairly quiet airings, but airings nonetheless. And he got polite applause as he walked off the pitch instead of the kind of hounding he got when he walked off against Norwich. But I think the fact that, there were plenty of people with rubbish handmade signs in that game. And I do think this notion of Old Trafford as a kind of bastion of difference in football, like some sort of different fan culture than other cultures, is eroding through the homogenisation of culture in general. It's that old guard are slowly eroding, and you're getting a more kind of the kind of fan base that against modern football people are against.
Yeah, anyway, so they were the games. A loss, a draw and a win. I guess that's progress. Van Gaal likes to talk about progress, so he's got some there. Back up to fifth, is sort of in touch with 3 points behind Tottenham, 6 behind City, and it's 9 to Arsenal now. So I think any aspirations around the title are probably gone, and we talked about it. Potentially United doing it just because there was so much inconsistency, but it's going to be a super tight race for the top 4, no doubt.
A couple of months ago, we were saying that the top 4 looked a lock because we were playing so safety first that we'd get enough points, but the rails came off. I do think it's also probably worth saying something about the fact that the terrible form did conflate with a run of injuries and Bastian Schweinsteiger missing 3 games. Like, there was a lot of absenteeism during that period. Maybe we'll look back on it and see that period was a real blip, but I'm not convinced about that, I have to say.
It's 8 games a blip. It's a quarter of a season.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. But I mean the 4 games, really. But those 4 games... Yeah, oh, God, this was another thing that Van Gaal did that absolutely wound me up to whatever. He said it was a good year, 2015, apart from December.
Yeah, and May and October.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you look at our results in October, absolute disgrace.
So it was a great year apart from a quarter of it.
Like, May was like, I don't know, it wasn't so disastrous, but definitely like late April, early May was a complete catastrophe. So,
do you think that United will qualify for the Champions League?
I suppose I do think that, but the basis for that is pretty flimsy because, I mean, of the teams above us, you look at City and Arsenal as being almost nailed on. So there's 2 places to compete for, really. Leicester, who knows where they're going to go from here, right? They've hit 40 points. I wouldn't be surprised if they finished 6th or 7th in the league because they had a disastrous second half of the season. But equally, I wouldn't be that surprised if they get back on it and start getting some results again.
That's some great analysis there. No,
but it's true though. Like, you can easily see it going in either direction. If Mardy and Mahrez, Mahrez and Vardy cool off a bit, then that whole team looks a lot worse, right?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. So I think Vardy and Mahrez and Kante in midfield are their 3 key players. Injury to any one of them could derail their season. I think just the thinner squad and those 3 are so key. So of course they could drop up, but equally, if Liverpool actually start putting a run of results together and Tottenham are going great guns at the moment, then you're looking at a really, really tight race for the top four, because we don't really expect Arsenal and City to drop that much, do we?
No, and I have to say, though, when you bring Liverpool into it, I think Liverpool are worse than us, right? They're as inconsistent as us, and they've probably got a worse squad, and, the huge Klopp bounce definitely seems to have come back down to earth with a bit of a bump.
It has, yeah.
The Spurs thing, I don't know if you saw Spurs-Everton today. Like, in the first half, Spurs looked like bordering on breathtaking at times. They looked so good. Everton did really well. And Everton are I think Everton are probably more likely to make the top four than Liverpool, actually. I don't know. It's going to be super, super tight again. But I feel like at this time last season we were saying exactly the same thing, and then United went on a really brilliant run in spring. So we'll see if there's anything like that on the horizon this time. Because again, I know this is an analysis again, but I wouldn't be surprised if United went on a proper run and put some results together, because there is a good team in there somewhere.
All right, well, yeah, I think it's going to be tight. We talked about the fans a little bit earlier. Do we have any Rantcast listener questions this time round?
We do. At Joe Petruccio says, will I find love in 2016? #Rantcast.
No, mate, just forget it and watch United.
You just need to find a nice socialist girl, Joe. At Ryan Dino7 says, is title hamster the best description for a footballer ever? I don't know if you saw this, Ed, but this is absolutely genius. Build described Ryan Giggs as a title hamster. I just think presumably because he stores titles in his cheeks. I don't know. I liked it a lot anyway.
Very nice.
At JB73 says, and I think this is a great question, what good work is LVG doing behind the scenes that would impress the board enough not to sack him? Is it with youth?
No, I don't think it's that.
Nope.
Not having the full inside view, I don't think he has much say in the youth team and or youth setup at all. No, I don't think it's that. I mean, he's given a lot of players a go, but that's not a reason for keeping a manager. So did David Moyes. It's not that. I think it's a desperate hope for some kind of progress and consistency and not becoming a club that sacks a manager every year.
And at Adiraj S. Ratoro says, is LVG still at the club because Woodward is guarding himself from criticism? What of Woodward if LVG fails?
Yeah, I mean, there's something in this theory, at least, isn't there? Because 2 managers and 2 failures is going to look pretty bad on Woodward's ability to run the club properly. And there's some interesting thoughts around Woodward, because he was United's sort of, chief commercial guy. He put together the leverage buyout. He's very close to the Glazers. They have a very strong working relationship, but he has seemingly failed when it comes to the kind of core football part, which is helping the manager to build a team. He's so many failed bids. Basically, the strategy is call up an agent and get the player and shell out the money, and has kind of been acting as this de facto director of football, and it feels a bit antiquated as a structure, and some of his limitations seem to have come out as a result.
Yeah, Jamie Jackson on this very podcast saying that this is essentially Woodward's club now. And at Will Waite asking, is the relationship too cosy between United executives, e.g. Van Gaal and Woodward and the Glazers?
Well, you'd want a good, strong working relationship, wouldn't you? I mean, yeah. It's look, you can in a typical corporate environment, you do create checks and balances, because that's important to make sure the kind of strategy and direction of the company is right, and you have this kind of natural tension between shareholders, the chairman, and the board. But that's not really what we're trying to create at United. What you're trying to create is consistency of thought and structure. And they don't have that. Now, the closer relationship might mean that United don't think about changing the structure. I know that the very typical sort of owner, CEO, manager structure has been in place for decades at United, and that kind of history and consistency can serve United very well. But it served United very well when we had a brilliant manager. It doesn't serve United very well, or seemingly doesn't serve United very well, given the talents of Woodward and Van Gaal. And it just feels, again, speculation here, just feels that United are lacking a little bit of football nous, in the kind of upper echelons of the hierarchy. Woodward's a banker, the Glazers are absentee landlords, United still don't have an academy director. I caused a bit of fuss complaining about the scouting system on this podcast.
I was going to mention this, Ed. Do we have to do a retraction here?
Well, no, not exactly, no, because the wider point about the chaos in the scouting system is true. People pointed out that my comment about them having no full-time scouts was wrong, so fair enough. They have a lot of contract scouts. But just some of the key structures don't appear to have been updated post-Ferguson.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember saying that United wasn't a political club when Van Gaal took over, because this has generally been what he's fallen foul of over time. He's not a very good politician in a club structure. But of course, this was a very naive thing to say, because actually the only reason United have not been a political club is Ferguson. He had complete control. When Stalin fell, the Politburo became a lot more about politicking, right? So when Ferguson leaves, the vacuum of power means that there is going to be politics there, and it'd be fascinating to know what's really going on behind the scenes. But for now, for sure, it definitely seems like Woodward believes in Van Gaal, although he also must know that a reputation for boringness is a disaster for United. Like, this is it's actually, I think, probably more of a problem for Woodward if United are perceived as boring than if they are unsuccessful on the pitch, right? Because the two things that people want to buy into when they invest in United in terms of like sponsors and stuff is either vicarious success and vicarious glory, or vicarious glamour and vicarious excitement. If you don't have either of those two, then what are you really selling, Yeah,
it's a very good point in that one. This is that's the only thing you buy you buy United's reach, and this is why the club talks about 669 million fans or whatever, supporters, followers. Yep. And because you're buying that kind of extension, but it is vicarious, yeah, absolutely. And if United is an unsuccessful club, that's one thing. That I'm not sure the reach dissipates overnight, albeit sort of overseas fans are more fickle. I mean, fickle in terms of their support or following.
Yeah, you don't mean individual overseas fans, right? You mean the group, the collective bank of people out in the world, yeah.
But yeah, if United are not sexy anymore, this is the thing that creates the massive global reach.
At Big Fudge 316 says, pugs or drugs? #Rantcast.
Can you smoke a pug?
Gotta go with pugs, son. Gotta go with pugs. Much more sustainable in the long run. Oh yeah, this is an interesting point. At Wormito says, is the return of Will Keane going to be any use to us?
No.
Not being prolific for P&E, why recall him and not Wilson? Well, weird that. I mean, presumably he's not so much been recalled as sent home because Preston don't want him anymore.
Yeah, I wondered whether they were putting a positive spin on it. Yeah, talk to Preston fans and they say he's been terrible.
Yep, absolutely. I've a couple of friends who are Preston fans and have said very much the same thing. At J. McCowan Esquire says, why is Daley Blind getting slower? Look, it's been a long season, all right. A lot of games in quick succession.
Can he get slower?
Quick succession was the wrong phrase to use, wasn't it? Actually, this one's the final one. At Bridgie3 says, has Mata been a good signing for United?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he scored, started 60-odd games and scored 20-something, and similar number of assists, fewer assists and goals, actually, I think, with Mata. So he has been, just on the numbers he produces, that's very good for a midfield player, very good for a midfield player who's spent most of his time at United out of position and somewhat isolated on the right wing. What he doesn't do, which is what I guess we hoped he'd do when he came, is run games as a number 10.
Yeah.
Mainly because he hasn't played there very often, but also because when he has played there, he hasn't really put in that kind of performance.
Yeah.
I'd like to see him have 15 games in a row at number 10, and then we'd really find out.
Yeah, and I think he's in poor form as well. I think he's as much as the team's in a bad run of form, I think Mata personally has been in a bad run of form, and you can see it in some of his finishing and stuff. I think he's in a difficult moment, as he would probably put it himself. Has he been a signing that justifies this kind of huge hoopla and massive transfer fee? Maybe you could say no, you'd expect a bit more, but I don't think you could say it's been a disastrous or terrible signing either, by any means.
And not all his own fault.
No, absolutely. So, shall we preview some 0-0 draws?
Very good, yeah, let's do that. The FA Cup is back.
Yes! We're not going to win it again! Hooray!
It's been 11 years. Well, it'll be 12 years by the time we get to the final. So, I'd really, really like to see United put in a good run in the FA Cup, wouldn't you?
Yes, as we've said every year since the start of the Rantcast.
Yeah, it's such a shame that it really hasn't happened. And, just wonder, will Van Gaal prioritise it? Will we get a full team out against Sheffield United? I presume he's going to want to make a few changes.
Yeah, he didn't mess about too much in the FA Cup last year, did he? We just were dreadful with a fairly full-strength team.
Yeah, true. Look, this should be a banker, right?
No, I mean, what should? Like, there's nothing about... if you look at our performance in the Cup last season, we made really heavy weather of beating Yeovil away, drew 0-0 with Cambridge away, beat them fairly comfortably at home, really struggled with Preston away, even though we won that 3-1. It was not until the last half an hour that United really came good, and then lost the first proper game we had. So, and we've lost to Norwich at home and Bournemouth away this season, and not a huge amount in it, really. I'm not convinced this is going to be an easy ride at all.
How much do you know about Sheffield United then? You've been deeply researching their squad?
No, but football, innit?
Yeah.
They won a game. They won some games. They had been on like a pretty decent run, actually, between their League One performance. Oh, okay. Listen. Full disclosure, I may have thought they were in the Championship until this very moment.
Modern Premier League fans, just not real fans. Yeah, I mean, they're doing okay. They're 8.
I might have been thinking about Wednesday as well. That's also possible.
You've just alienated at least 3 Sheffield Wednesday and or Sheffield United fans that listen to this podcast.
Do you lean Wednesday or United? I've always been a Wednesday man myself.
For various family reasons. I've been to quite a lot of Wednesday games over the years. Not that I do it very often. Or haven't, in fact, in about 20 years. But when I was younger, I went to quite a few. So I suppose so. Look, they're doing okay. They're 8th in League One. They lost at the weekend. This is a decent-sized club. They always used to get pretty good crowds at Bramall Lane. They probably ought to be a Championship club. They're not, and United ought to thump them. Ought to.
But we just don't really thump teams anymore, do we? I mean, when was the last time we absolutely thumped someone?
I don't remember. 3-0 at Everton. That was, sort of a thumping.
Yeah.
Sort of.
But, when did we last score more than 3 goals in a game?
Don't remember.
We did it against Leverkusen. Has there been one since then?
I don't think so.
No, okay, maybe one. But anyway, thumping seems a long shot.
It does indeed, yeah. Anyway, let's hope for a narrow victory.
Yes.
As we shut the game down after scoring. It won't be in the first half, of course, because we can't score in the first half at home.
Yeah, not since October the 30th, right? That's quite a frightening statistic, I think.
Anyway, so back to the league. After United's thumping victory over Sheffield United, we have a midweek game.
Can I just ask, right, a genuine question for Rankcast listeners. Is that the worst preview we've ever done? Or have we done worse previews than that before? I think we might have done worse, but that's only because we've set the bar so staggeringly low. Sorry for wasting 3 minutes of your life there, listeners. Sheffield United are a team. That's what we learnt.
They are a team. They're in League One. And they lost at the weekend, and they had a decent run recently. So if you had not looked at anything on the internet about United's upcoming game, you have received information.
Yep.
Very good. So, on to the league. Newcastle away. What do you know about Newcastle away?
I know a little bit more about Newcastle than I know about Sheffield, but not that much. Newcastle's season has been really weird. It looked like it was just going to be an unmitigated disaster. Then there was a little patch of pretty decent form, which, as has been noted far and wide, genuinely coincides with when they're on the telly. This sense that Newcastle are some sort of feeder club, basically, and that all their players are just there to be in the Premier League and be seen, genuinely seems to have some merit to it, because they raise their game in the big games considerably, and it must be incredibly frustrating if you're connected to that club in any way, shape or form. But their recent run of results since they beat Liverpool 2-0 has been just pathetic. They beat Liverpool and then they beat Spurs, right, in mid-December.
Right.
Then they drew at home with Villa, lost at home to Everton, lost 1-0 away to West Bromwich, who've been in dire form, and then lost 1-0 to Arsenal. That's not a bad result this weekend. So they are a wild. Their best and their worst are a very long way apart. But I think if you had to gamble on it one way or another, you would say they're more likely to be closer to their best than closer to their worst against United. Yeah,
because it's a big game, and I presume St James's Park will be full and raucous as it is when United turn up.
Yep.
They get good crowds there anyway, of course. given how bad they've been for decades. In fact, the entire history of the club is a statement, I guess. So, look, Steve McClaren's under pressure. He's definitely up for the sack if Newcastle can't, turn some of their season around. They're in the relegation zone. You'd say that they are probably one of the favourites, and Villa are definitely going down. Sunderland are pretty poor. Big Sam doesn't seem to have pulled anything around there. And Newcastle, I think, are the third worst team in the division. So Claren's going to get the sack unless they can turn it around. Will the players be up for a big game against United? Definitely.
You've got me looking up the odds on the sack race. Van Gaal is 1-3 on to be the next manager sacked, next manager to leave post, and McClaren is 12-1. So the bookies reckon Van Gaal is under considerably more pressure than McClaren there. It's kind of interesting.
It's interesting, yeah. I mean, the bookies are not too far out generally when it comes to results and predicting the Premier League table, because they run all the same statistical models that we follow on social media.
Yeah.
They have their own ones. Clubs sacking managers, that's a little harder to call, You can't really model that out, other than, I suppose, there's a good correlation between results and getting sacked.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they give 12-1 on bets that they think are likely to come in too often. So, especially in what is not an insubstantial market, it's not like some obscure match, is it, in a third division in Italy or whatever? No.
I mean, Sunderland have changed their manager, Villa have changed their manager, Swansea have changed their manager. So I guess so Chelsea. So who else could get sacked?
Yeah.
Is Eddie Howe going to get sacked at Bournemouth? Not likely. Ronald Koeman did such a good job last year, it'd be pretty dumb to sack him.
Yeah.
I don't think Martinez is going to leave Everton. So, there aren't too many other candidates, and that'll come into it a little bit. I guess that's down the bottom of the table. 1-3 on for Van Gaal. Do the bookies know something that Ed Woodward doesn't?
Yeah, so anyway, we'll if I guess the results of that particular fixture will affect those particular odds quite dramatically, because if Newcastle win, then they will move further apart in those directions. But if United win, I guess there'll be a bit of a swing round, especially if you beat Sheffield United, because then you can start talking about some momentum again, especially if we can stay a bit injury free.
If we can stay injury free, it's not happened often over the last 18 months, has it?
No.
But win over Sheffield United, win over Newcastle, and that is momentum. That'll be 3 on the bounce, and very important coming into that big game at Anfield.
Yeah, and so I think when you look at the sort of pattern of play against Newcastle, it's going to be quite interesting. Their game at Old Trafford was the absolute model of United's attacking ineffectiveness. Colaccini was tremendous that day and has apparently been basically near useless ever since. Newcastle just showed absolutely no ambition whatsoever in that game, as little as any team at Old Trafford has all season. Presumably, they will have to show some more ambition at home, because they've got an expectant crowd there, and they're not just going to rock up and sit in 2 banks of 4, you would think, which could be good news for United.
Could be, yeah. I mean, United get the possession of the ball most of the time anyway. Yeah, let's see. If Newcastle open it up, that is better. Not that United play on the break. Tend to slow it down, don't they?
Well, actually, it was noticeable against both Chelsea and Swansea that United did sort of just finish a couple of their breaks. They just kind of actually went for it instead of checking back and creating a pattern of possession.
Only one thing you actually need to do if United want to break quickly, and that's just pass it to Martial. Doesn't matter where he is, just pass it to Martial. One thing to note, Pavel Srnicek died this week.
Of course, yeah.
Newcastle's goalkeeper from years ago, had a heart attack, age 47.
Yeah, it's very sad indeed. I'm sure Newcastle fans would be gutted about that one, because he was a big hero in Newcastle.
He was, former teammate of Alan Shearer and Andy Cole, of course.
Whose Premier League record Wayne Rooney beat in scoring his goal. And it was nice to see Rooney get a record with a fantastic goal, a reminder of the superb player he has been throughout his United career up until the last 3 seasons.
Absolutely, he is now top goal scorer for England, second top goal scorer for United, only 11 behind. He might make that if he finishes out his contract, which has another 3 years to run on it. Crawl. And a few more behind Alan Shearer could become the best goal scorer in Premier League history. Well, probably not, we'll see.
No, that's a big long shot, isn't it? Because he's still 30 goals behind or something. A good long way behind, anyway. I think that one's probably out of reach. It's more than 30, I think, isn't it? Because it's 174 to 220 something.
Yeah, so quite a few. So if Rooney was at his peak and still scoring 15 this season, then yeah, maybe. But I don't think so. I did 10 predictions for 2016, some of which were a little more serious than others. And
I saw this. Very nice.
I predicted that Wayne Rooney would be sold. I guess it's a stretch. I don't think so. I mean, there was that pre-season charity match that he played in, Duncan Ferguson's testimonial, wasn't it? And
yeah,
and he actually got a very good reception. So there was some sort of chatter about that warming, paving the path for Rooney to return home to Everton. So could it happen? They'd have to give him a huge payoff to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Seems somewhat unlikely.
You got any predictions for 2016?
In terms of United, honestly, not any good ones. Not any ones that anyone would want to hear. My honest predictions about the direction that United are currently heading in are pretty, not bleak, but they're definitely tempered with caution. Although, it'll only take 3 wins on the bounce against mid-ranking Premier League oppositions to have me convinced we'll win the Champions League by the end of next season. That and a good transfer window. The transfer window's open. We haven't bought anyone yet. Loads of rumours about Felipe Anderson, which seems like the dirt worst idea in the history of ideas. Bring a kind of somewhat flaky, in and out of form, brilliant Brazilian to a Louis van Gaal team.
Yeah, I like Anderson. I think he's got plenty about him, but you're right about the inconsistency. And he doesn't feel like a player that would fit with Van Gaal at all. He's not a structured player. He's given the ball and he's brilliant from a sort of wide right or wide inside forward position.
Yeah, right.
Which is exactly the same position that Sadio Mane plays, of course, and rumours about United bidding for him after, I guess, these inevitable press putting 2 and 2 together. Had a fallout with Ronald Koeman this week because he didn't turn up for the game on time.
Because he was too busy on the phone to Louis van Gaal talking about... Van Gaal's like, you don't want to play for him, you want to play for me. My house is much bigger than his.
Yeah, except Van Gaal, of course, wouldn't talk to anyone. So Mane would be talking to his agent, who would be talking to a third-party agent, who would be the middleman between United's agent, who'd be talking to Ed Woodward.
Yes, quite. All right, so talking of talking, it's time to talk predictions. Let's predict the Sheffield United and Newcastle United results for Manchester United.
Awesome. I think United will win 3-0 against Sheffield United. I think it will be 1-1 at St James's Park.
Okay, I'm going to go with a 2-1 win over Sheffield United, which has everyone tearing their hair out. I'll go with 1-1 as well at Newcastle. But secretly, I was going to say 2-1 Newcastle, but I couldn't bring myself to do it.
I don't think we've ever predicted United would lose, have we?
Just once or twice. Recently, once or twice. I'd love to know what we predicted over Christmas. No memory of that whatsoever. If only there was some way of finding out what we'd said. So I hope that you, the fine, lovely listeners, have had a nice festive season. We're back in full swing, so we should be doing one of these most weeks for the rest of this season. And I think I'm not going out on too much of a limb to say that everyone here at the Rantcast wishes you and yours a lovely 2016. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.